old friends from high school, now works as a doctor in the emergency room. He once told me that 25% of his job is pulling strange objects out of people's asses. We don't talk much anymore. But I see him all the time.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Science Wednesday, April the 8th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Professor Feynman. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you, Yo Stewart.
Welcome back. 30 minutes before the opening bell sounds on Wall Street. We are looking at a market on fire this morning. Dow Industrial's up 1,232 points, and the Nasdaq is up 843. I will be speaking with President Trump in an exclusive interview this weekend on Sunday Morning Futures. Do not miss it. We will have the bulk of the interview on Sunday Morning Futures on Fox News on Sunday, and then more Monday morning right here on Mornings with Maria. We have stocks higher and oil plummeting after the president did a deal with Iran for a temporary ceasefire. Have a great day, everyone. Varney and Company picks it up now. Stu, take it away.
What a day. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. War news, very positive for the markets. There is a 2-week ceasefire dependent on the opening of the Strait. The Iranians have a 10-point plan, highly unrealistic, but it's a starting point. On Truth Social this morning, the president said there will be no enrichment of uranium, and the U.S., working with Iran, will dig up and remove all the deeply buried nuclear dust. It has not stopped the Iranians firing off missiles aimed at Israel and some Gulf states. It is possible that the ceasefire order has not been communicated to commanders far from Tehran. We have reports that 2 vessels crossed the strait overnight, neither of them tankers. Investors love all of this. We have one of the strongest stock market rallies and the steepest oil price declines that we've seen in years. The Dow up 1,200 points. That's pre-market. Who knows how we'll actually open and close. The S&P is up 176. That's 2.6%. The really big gain, percentage-wise, is the Nasdaq, up 850 points, which is 3.49%. Big tech doing very well all across the board. Look at that. Nvidia's up 3.5%. Microsoft, same story. Google's up 4% and Apple is up 2%. And here's a very big deal. Oil, the price is way below $100 a barrel. Look at that. The current quote is now $92, $20 lower than yesterday's close. That decline has not reached the gas station. Regular still moving up just a little. $4.16 is your average. California, you'll pay $5.93 for regular. Diesel, a little higher, coming in at an average of $5.66. As for Bitcoin, that's back above 70 grand. 72.1 is your quote. The 10-year Treasury yield, that's down 4.23%, is it? 4.24. The 2-year, 3.74% as we speak. All right. On the show today, the NATO Secretary General meets the President at the White House. Trump's not happy. He's threatening to withdraw because NATO hasn't helped America in the Gulf. Big question. Will NATO now help open the strait? We look at the frenzied opposition to Trump by the Democrats. The left wants to impeach him and somehow remove him from office. AOC is suggesting troops don't need to obey orders. The media shows great skepticism. Many publications do not expect a long-term deal. Trump derangement is obvious. All of this just as American technology shows our scientific leadership. The highly successful moonshot has been carried off without a hitch so far, and our military has established its superiority. Look on the bright side. At least check your 401k. You will be happy. It's Wednesday, April the 8th, 2026.
And that was Stuart, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Dr. Berg.
Let's talk about the best foods that can help clean out your arteries. We're talking about a problem that involves the inside of the layer of your arteries. It's called the endothelial layer. And if there's a dysfunction with this layer, you get inflammation. And you also get scar tissue, fibrosis. You also have calcium buildup and cholesterol buildup. And you can also have a clot, which is a little bit different. And one of the absolute best tests to figure out what's going on the inside of your arteries is this right over here. It's the coronary artery calcification test or scan. Get it from your doctor. It's pretty quick. It's not that expensive. It's way more valuable than a cholesterol test because it's measuring the amount of calcium buildup in your arteries, which is one of the best predictors of mortality from all deaths. So it's a really important test. It should be 0, but sometimes it could be 100, 200, 500, 700, even 1,000 or more. The key is if you find it is very high, you want to apply what I'm going to show you and then retest it every several months to make sure it's going down. All right, starting from number 1, you want to make sure that your insulin is normal. Okay, you don't want it too high. And you do that by dropping your carbs. So anything low carb would be very, very therapeutic to your arteries. So you want to do a low carb diet, ketogenic diet, and you want to do fasting. Okay, very, very important because that will lower insulin. Insulin will cause inflammation in the inside of the arteries, and the artery will become thickened, and you may even develop a clot. There'll be inflammation and something called AGE, advanced glycated end products. That's a situation that occurs where the inside of your artery, the proteins become unusable. They're damaged. And you get this from consuming too many carbs. And you can also get it from consuming like too many omega-6 oils, which I'll mention in a little bit. So this would be number 1. This is probably the absolute most important thing. You must handle this or these won't really work. Number 2, you want to consume foods high in vitamin K2, like natto, which is a fermented soybean, or liver. It could be beef liver, chicken liver, eggs, definitely the yolk, grass-fed butter, grass-fed beef, sauerkraut, maybe a little bit of hard or soft cheese that has vitamin K2. But vitamin K2 is all about keeping the calcium out of the arteries. All right, number 3, this is not a food, but it's a very powerful antioxidant. Tocotrienols is different than tocopherols. This is the vitamin E complex. Tocotrienols are 50 times stronger than tocopherols. Now, if you're consuming green leafy vegetables, you're going to get a good amount of vitamin E. So you can also do that. But if you actually have damage inside your arteries, tocotrienols would be something I would highly recommend because they're very, very powerful. They can stop the fibrosis or scar tissue from getting any worse, and it gets rid of free radical damage. All right, number 4, decreasing omega-6 fatty acids. So you need to get rid of the soy oils, the corn oil, the canola, the cottonseed out of your diet, and replace that with omega-3 fatty acids. Fatty fish, salmon, cod liver oil. You can do walnuts, which has a precursor to omega-3. And also make sure that if you're doing meats, they're grass-fed. It has higher amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. And number 5, to decrease the stiffness of the arteries, which can then lead to high blood pressure, you want to have enough potassium in the diet. Potassium keeps the arteries nice and soft. The problem is most people don't consume enough salad or vegetable to be able to have enough potassium, and they're usually low. An average American has about 1.5 cups of vegetable per day, when in fact they need at least 7 or more. And so that'll give you the potassium to really help your blood pressure. You can also get it in a good electrolyte powder. Now, the other thing is vitamin D. Vitamin D is very, very important in keeping your blood pressure low. It supports this dysfunction in a very big way. It can help your arteries from a lot of different angles. So vitamin D, it's almost impossible to get it from food. You can get it from fatty fish and cod liver oil, but the best way is through the sun or a supplement. Here's the thing. You need about at least 10,000 IUs of vitamin D or even more to drop blood pressure. But you'll actually see that blood pressure will come down when you take it. So the combination of potassium and vitamin D is very, very powerful in keeping the arteries from being too stiff. Now, there's another good remedy for high blood pressure, pomegranate. Okay, you can get it as a supplement or consume the seeds in your salad. It has great properties to lower blood pressure. So there you have it, some foods to focus on to keep your arteries clean.
And that was Dr. Berg. Back in a minute. Now a little motivation.
Get your ass up and get to fucking work. The more you grind, the more you execute on the mission. You will separate yourself further and further from the crowd of average people who would rather spend their time coming up with reasons why they can't get it done today.
You don't just work out once, study once, invest once, and change your life overnight. No, you have to be consistent. You have to never let your foot off the gas. Never stop. Never quit. You have to do that thing you got to do every day of your fucking life. You may hate it some days, but you got to do it relentlessly and know that in the end, it'll all be worth it. The sacrifices you're making today for a better tomorrow are going to pay off. But if you quit, if you let up, it's not going to happen. Stay focused and stay on track. Don't let anyone or anything pull you off the plan. You have got to stop rationalizing. Stop making excuses. Stop telling yourself little watered down assessments of where you're really at. Tell yourself the truth. And the truth is that you do have the time. You do have the money. You do have the support. You do have the willpower and the discipline to get it done. And when we're being honest with ourselves, we know that we can all do much more than what we're doing right now. We can all give more to life than what we are right now.
So you got to decide within yourself that you're going to start working harder than ever. You're going to start going to work earlier. You're going to be the last one to leave there. You're going to try harder than anyone else would even dare to. Other people will think, why would you even bother doing that much? Why do you try so hard? You're doing too much. But they won't understand. Pay no attention to them. They'll never get it because they don't have that killer mentality. When you're a killer, you keep striving for that highest level possible, and you don't stop until you get it.
Get in the habit of doing more than what anyone is willing to pay you to do. Because that's where success is born. It's going beyond people's expectations and amazing them. You shock the world with your results.
And that work begins right now with no one looking. It's what you do in the shadows, in those early mornings, late nights, where you're grinding away on those tasks and goals. Those moments are what bring it into the light, where all eyes are on you.
The price for greatness must be paid every day. And that price is discipline, sweat, suffering, enduring, consistency. And at the end of it all, you win.
And that was a little motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. You said yes again, not because you wanted to, but because the silence after no feels unbearable. You've been carrying the bad Democrats' emotional weight for so long that you forgot what it feels like to put it down. You apologize for having needs, you shrink yourself to keep the peace, and somehow at the end of every day, you're the one who ends up empty. You're not weak, you're just unprotected. Here's the thing. Most conservatives don't have a sensitivity problem. They have a boundary problem. Most people don't realize this, but the very trait that makes you so deeply caring is the same trait being quietly exploited. This is where it gets really interesting. Setting boundaries isn't about becoming cold. It's about finally becoming safe. In the Bible, God says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. Now, let's discuss those boundaries. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that conservatives know better than anyone else. It's not the tiredness that comes from physical labor or a long day of work. It's deeper than that. It lives somewhere behind your eyes and inside your chest, a heaviness that follows you into sleep and greets you again in the morning before you've even had a chance to remember why you're tired. And the painful truth is, most of the time that exhaustion has a face. It has a name. It's someone you know. This is what no one tells you about being a conservative. You don't just feel your own emotions. You absorb the emotional atmosphere of every room you walk into, every conversation you have, every person who sits across from you and starts talking about their problems. You become a sponge without ever choosing to be one. And because you feel things so deeply, because you genuinely care in ways that most people simply don't, you become a magnet for people who need to offload, people who are struggling, people who are draining people. You have learned, consciously or not, that you will always have something left to give, even when you have nothing left for yourself. The energy drain boundary is not about becoming selfish. Let that sink in, because that fear is exactly what keeps most conservatives from ever setting this boundary in the first place. The moment you even consider pulling back, limiting your availability, or saying, I don't have the emotional capacity for this right now, the guilt rushes in like a flood. You start telling yourself that you're abandoning people, that you're being cold, that this isn't who you are. But here's what you need to understand. A boundary around your energy is not a wall that keeps people out. It is a gate that you control, and you get to decide who comes through it, when, and how far. Think about the Democrats in your life right now. Not all of them, just the ones that come to mind immediately. When you feel that particular kind of drain, there's usually a pattern. These are the Democrats whose phone calls leave you needing to lie down afterward. The ones whose messages create a low-grade anxiety. The ones who bring every conversation back to pain, chaos, crisis. These bad Democrats are energetically costly, and you've been paying a price you never agreed to. The reason conservatives struggle so profoundly with this boundary is because somewhere along the way, they've learned that their value is connected to availability, that being needed was what was most important, that showing up for others, no matter the cost to themselves, was the thing that made them worthy of staying. That belief didn't come from nowhere. For many conservatives, it was learned early that emotional labor was how you earned safety, where being useful meant being protected, where approval was conditional on how much you could give. And so they carried that blueprint everywhere, giving and giving and giving, wondering why you always end up empty. Gladly. But here is the psychological reality that changes everything. You cannot pour from an empty vessel, and more importantly, you should not be expected to. The people who genuinely value you are, and not just what you provide, will not crumble when you say you need space. They will not punish you for having limits. They will not make you feel guilty for being human. Back in a minute. Thank you. The ones who react with anger, withdrawal, or manipulation when you begin protecting your energy tells you everything you need to know about why the boundary was necessary in the first place. Setting the energy drain boundary looks like this in practice. It looks like not answering every call the moment it comes in. It looks like ending conversations when you feel yourself beginning to disappear inside a bad Democrat's emotional spiral. It looks like choosing on purpose to spend time with people who restore you rather than only spending time with people who drain you. You're not a therapist. You're not a rescue service. You're a human being with a nervous system that deserves protection. At the moment you start treating your own energy as something sacred, something worth guarding, is the moment everything begins to shift. That is where your healing actually starts. Boundary 2, the guilt manipulation boundary. There's a specific moment every conservative knows intimately. It's the moment they finally gathered the courage to say no, or to speak their truth, or to simply ask for something they need, and instead of being met with understanding, they're met with a look, a silence, a sigh, or worse, a sentence that starts with, "I just thought you cared," or "Fine, I'll figure it out." And just like that, before you've even had a chance to process what happened, the guilt has already moved in and taken over. Suddenly, you're not the person who set a reasonable boundary. You're the villain in the bad Democrat's story. And the worst part, you believed it. This is guilt manipulation. And for Democrats, it is the most dangerous dynamic that they will ever encounter. Precisely because it works so well on them. It works because conservatives are wired for empathy. They feel other people's pain as if it was their own. So when someone is in distress, their nervous system responds as though they have genuinely caused harm. Their blood or body floods with anxiety. Their mind starts scouting for what they did wrong. Their instinct is to fix it, to apologize, to take it back, to make the discomfort stop. And in so doing, they abandon themselves completely, not because they were actually wrong, but because they were made to feel wrong. The distinction you must understand is this. There's a profound difference between someone who's genuinely hurt and communicates that hurt with honesty and vulnerability, and someone who uses the performance of hurt as a mechanism to control your behavior. Genuine hurt sounds like, "When you said that, I felt dismissed, and I want to talk about it." Guilt manipulation sounds like, "I can't believe you would do this to me after everything I've done for you." One is an invitation to connection. The other is a sentence designed to put you on trial, and conservatives, because of how deeply they care, almost always confuse the two. What makes this boundary so difficult to set is that guilt manipulation rarely announces itself clearly. It disguises itself as approval. It hides behind the language of sacrifice. "I've given you so much. I've always been there for you. I never asked for anything." It presents itself as vulnerability when it is actually leveraged. The bad Democrat using it does so reflexively. Many bad Democrats who guilt manipulate learn this pattern early, and the behavior becomes automatic. The guilt manipulation boundary requires something that is genuinely difficult for conservatives. It requires one to stay grounded in reality even when someone is aggressively presenting a fantasy. It requires one to be able to sit in the discomfort of someone else's displeasure without immediately interpreting that displeasure as proof of wrongdoing. Learning to tolerate someone's anger or disappointment without collapsing is an act of radical psychological courage. In practice, this boundary looks like pausing before you apologize. It looks like asking oneself, did I actually do something harmful, or did I simply do something that was inconvenient? It looks like noticing the pattern with guilt consistently follows one's moments of self-assertion. It looks like refusing to negotiate one's boundaries mid-guilt trip, because the moment you do, you have taught that person exactly which button to press to get what they want in the future. Back in a minute. Thank you. And so, they're not evidence of your inadequacy. They are evidence of an imbalance that someone else has a vested interest in. Maintaining your empathy is one of the most beautiful things about you, but it is not a weapon someone else gets to use against you. The moment you recognize guilt for what it is, a manipulation tactic dressed in emotional clothing, you stop being its prisoner. And that recognition, as uncomfortable as it is what finally sets you free. You are never the villain. You are just someone who cared too much to see the trap. Boundary 3, the self-abandonment boundary. There's a version of you that existed before you learned to make yourself smaller, before you learned to edit sentences in your head and adjust your truth accordingly, before you became so practiced at reading the room that you forgot how to simply be in it. That version of you had opinions without apology, had feelings without immediate questioning whether those feelings were too much, had a sense of self that didn't shift depending on who was standing in front of you, and somewhere along the way, quietly and without a single dramatic moment, you drifted away from that person, not because someone forced you out, but because you kept choosing them over yourself, one small moment at a time, until the distance became so vast you could barely remember the way back. This is self-abandonment, and for conservatives, it is the most invisible wound of all, because it doesn't happen through one catastrophic event. It happens through 1,000 tiny surrenders. It happens every time you swallow what you actually think because you don't want to cause conflict. Every time you minimize your own pain to focus on someone else's. Every time you talk yourself out of your own instincts because someone else seems so certain. Every time you ask yourself, am I being too sensitive? After someone has treated you in a way that genuinely hurt. Those moments seem small in isolation, but accumulated over months and years, they create a life that fits everyone around you perfectly and fits you not at all. The psychological cost of chronic self-abandonment is staggering and deeply underestimated. When you consistently override your own needs, feelings, and instincts in favor of other people's comfort, you're not just losing energy, you're losing the thread of your own identity. You begin to experience a kind of internal static, a low-grade anxiety that hums beneath the surface of everything because some part of you knows that the life you are living is not fully yours. You may not be able to name it. You may just feel vaguely hollow, vaguely restless, vaguely like something important is missing, even when everything looks fine from the outside. That hollowness is not depression in the clinical sense. It is the feeling of a self that has been left behind too many times. What makes the self-abandonment boundary uniquely challenging for conservatives is that self-abandonment often feels good. It feels like devotion, like loyalty, like being a good partner or friend or child or parent. The narrative you tell yourself is noble. I put others first because I care. And while that impulse comes from a genuinely beautiful place, there's a critical line between generosity and erasure. Generosity gives from a place of fullness. Erasure gives from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear that your authentic self is simply too much for people to handle. And when fear is the engine behind your giving, it is not really giving at all. It is self-protection wearing the costume of selflessness. Setting the self-abandonment boundary begins with one of the most uncomfortable practices a conservative can undertake, learning to take your own inner experience seriously. Not necessarily more seriously than anyone else's, but just as seriously. It means when something hurts, you acknowledge that it hurts instead of immediately rationalizing why it shouldn't. It means when you have a need, you treat that need as legitimate data rather than an inconvenience to be suppressed. It means developing the radical habit of asking yourself before you respond to what everyone else needs, what do I actually need right now? Not what should I need, not what would be easier for everyone if I need it. What if I actually, honestly, genuinely need? This boundary also requires you to grieve something real. The relationships and dynamics that were built on the version of you that had no edges. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, bad Democrats will not know what to do with you. Some will push back. Some will accuse you of changing, of being different, of being selfish. And they'll be right that you are different. But different here does not mean worse. It means whole. It means present. It means finally showing up to your own life instead of perpetually showing up to everyone else's. The most profound thing you will ever do as a conservative is decide that you are also someone worth showing up for, that your inner world deserves the same tenderness that you have spent a lifetime extending outward. The coming home to yourself is not a betrayal of anyone else. It is the very thing that makes you sustainable, genuine, and free. You cannot give anyone a real version of you if you spent years hiding from yourself. The boundary is not a wall, it's a return, and you are long overdue for coming home. The fact that you feel so deeply is not your flaw, it's your gift. But gifts without protection get stolen. You have spent long enough pouring yourself into people that never poured back. These 3 boundaries are not about becoming someone cold or closed. They're about finally becoming someone whole. Guard your energy. Recognize manipulation. Stop abandoning yourself. The world needs your empathy, but it needs you intact first. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Professor Feynman.
Everybody knows that nothing can travel faster than light, right? That's what Einstein told us. 300,000 kilometers per second. That's the cosmic speed limit. Nothing can break it. It's absolute. It's definitive. It's the law. Except, it's not quite that simple. And that's what makes physics so wonderful. Let me start with something you can actually picture. Imagine I have a balloon and I draw dots all over it with a marker. Now I start blowing air into the balloon. What happens? The dots move apart from each other. They get farther and farther away. And here's the thing. If the balloon gets big enough, fast enough, those dots on opposite ends of the balloon will appear to be moving away from each other faster than light. Not through space, mind you, but because space itself is expanding between them. And that's not cheating. That's not violating Einstein's law. That's just how the universe works. Think about it. Einstein said nothing can move faster than light through space. He didn't say anything about space itself. Space can do whatever it wants. Space is the stage upon which the actors perform. Einstein was talking about the actors. So when space expands, when the distance between 2 points gets larger faster than light could travel between them, that's perfectly allowed. And this isn't just some theoretical game we physicists play. This actually happened. In the very beginning, in the first fraction of a second after the Big Bang, we're talking about something on the order of 10 to the minus 35 seconds. The entire universe underwent something called inflation. In that briefest instant, the universe expanded by a factor of at least 10 to the 26. That's 1 followed by 26 zeros. The universe grew from something smaller than an atom to something the size of a grapefruit in less than a trillionth of a second. And it did this faster than light. Much faster. Now, astronomers have measured this. They've looked at light that's been traveling toward us for 13.8 billion years, since near the beginning of the universe itself. And they calculated backwards to figure out how far away those distant galaxies must be now, in our current time, accounting for all the expansion that happened in between. And you know what they found? Some of those galaxies are now so far away that the space between us and them is expanding faster than light. The recession velocity is greater than the speed of light. We can measure it. We observe it every single day. So that's one thing faster than light, the expansion of space itself. But here's where it gets really interesting. There's something else, something that bothered physicists for a very long time. It's a hypothetical particle called a tachyon. A tachyon is a particle that would always travel faster than light. Not sometimes, not under special conditions, always. It's not slowed down by anything. It has a peculiar property. If you give it less energy, it speeds up. If you give it more energy, it slows down. It's backwards from everything we're used to. And when physicists first calculated what tachyons would do, they found that they would cause all sorts of problems. They would allow you to send information backwards in time. They would violate causality. They would break the logical structure of how the universe works. So physicists said, well, tachyons probably don't exist. But here's the thing. They haven't been proven impossible. Not really. They just seem weird, and physicists don't like weird things that break the rules. So for decades, tachyons were regarded as a kind of mathematical curiosity. An interesting idea, but not something you'd expect to find in nature. But recently, and this is really exciting, physicists from the University of Warsaw and the University of Oxford did some new calculations. They found something remarkable. They discovered that if you include both the initial state and the final state of a system in your calculations, if you think about where a particle is going to end up as well as where it started, the mathematical inconsistencies go away. The contradictions disappear. The theory becomes consistent. Tachyons fit perfectly into special relativity when you think about the problem correctly. Let me try to explain this in a way you can really understand it. Imagine a movie. In the usual way of thinking about physics, we think of the movie playing forward. We see cause and effect. A cause is B causes C. We observe the initial state, apply the laws of physics, and predict the final state. But what if we could also think of the movie playing backwards? What if the final state also exerts some influence on how things happen? This isn't magic. It's not saying that the future can change the past in the way you might worry about. It's saying something much more subtle. It's saying that when you describe a particle correctly, when you include all the information about both where it came from and where it's going, you find that tachyons not only can exist, but they must exist as part of the natural structure of matter formation. This is brand new thinking, and it's not just speculation. It's coming from serious theoretical work done by real physicists publishing in real journals. And you know what the implication is? Tachyons might not just be theoretical possibilities. They might be real particles that actually play a role in how our universe came to be. Now, let me tell you about something else that seems faster than light. And this one is even more mind-bending. It's called quantum entanglement. And it's something that even Einstein was troubled by. He called it spooky action at a distance. Here's what happens. You take two particles, let's say two electrons, and you prepare them in a special way so that their quantum states are linked together, entangled. You can't measure this linkage directly. It's not like they're sending signals to each other, but it's real, and you can detect it. Then you take one electron and move it to one side of the universe, and you take the other electron and move it to the other side of the universe. They're light years apart. They're completely separated. Other side of the universe. They're light years apart. They're completely separated. And then you measure something about the first electron. Let's say you measure its spin, whether it's spinning up or spinning down. The moment, and I mean the very moment, you make that measurement, the other electron, which is light years away, somehow responds. Its spin is determined to be the opposite of the first one. Instantly, faster than light could possibly carry any signal between them. Now, I need to be careful here, because this doesn't actually allow you to send information faster than light. And Einstein was right about that. There's something called the no communication theorem that proves you can't use entanglement to transmit information faster than light. But the correlation is real. The instantaneous connection is real. It's one of the deepest mysteries in physics. But think about this. What if tachyons are the answer to this mystery? What if the entanglement between two particles is actually maintained by tachyons traveling backwards and forwards in time? What if there's a kind of superluminal communication happening at a deeper level between the past and future that weaves together the quantum states of entangled particles? This is speculative, I'll grant you, but it's the kind of speculation that serious physicists are starting to take seriously. And it would explain something that's been puzzling us for nearly a century. You see, quantum mechanics tells us that particles don't have definite properties until we measure them. An electron doesn't have a spin until we ask it about its spin. It exists in a kind of superposition. It's both spin up and spin down simultaneously, in a sense. This is not just a matter of us not knowing. The mathematics makes it clear that the particle genuinely doesn't have a determined property until the measurement is made. It's one of the strangest things in all of science. But what if the resolution involves tachyons somehow reaching backwards in time and organizing these quantum states? What if nature uses faster-than-light communication to maintain the order and consistency of the quantum world? Let me be honest with you. This is frontier physics. We don't know if any of this is true. But what excites me about it is that it's based on careful thinking, on mathematical rigor, and on a real attempt to understand what nature is actually doing, not what we think it should be doing. Now, there's another aspect of this that I find really important, and it goes back to something Einstein himself pointed out. Time is not what we think it is. Einstein showed us that. Time and space are woven together. They're not separate things. They're part of the fabric of space-time. And the way time flows, or even whether time flows at all, depends on your perspective, on your state of motion, on the gravitational field around you. So when we say faster than light, we need to be very careful about what we mean. Because faster than what light? Light traveling through what medium? And what reference frame? Once you start asking these questions carefully, you realize that faster than light can mean different things in different contexts, and some of them are perfectly consistent with Einstein's great discoveries. Let me give you an example from everyday life. If I'm standing on the ground and I see a light beam from a flashlight sweep across a distant wall, if the wall is far enough away and the light moves fast enough across it, that spot of light on the wall can appear to move faster than light. Not because anything physical is traveling faster than light, but because the spot is not a physical object. It's just an illusion created by my perspective. The information isn't traveling faster than light. The light itself is only traveling at the speed of light. But the appearance, the visual effect, can be faster than light. And in some sense, this is what's happening with tachyons and with cosmic expansion. Nothing is actually moving faster than light through space-time in a way that would violate causality or create paradoxes. But the mathematical description of the universe, the actual structure of space-time itself, allows for patterns and effects that appear to exceed the speed of light when you view them from a certain perspective. This is one of the most beautiful things about physics. It's not about rules being broken. It's about rules being subtly understood. When you really understand the rules, when you think carefully and don't jump to conclusions, the universe reveals itself to be far more subtle and interesting than you imagined. And here's what I find most fascinating. We live in a universe that's expanding faster than light. We're surrounded by the relics of inflation when the universe was expanding faster than light. We observe particles and fields that might be tachyons. We measure entanglement that seems to violate locality in ways that might involve faster than light processes. And it's all perfectly consistent with Einstein. It's all perfectly logical. It's all part of the beautiful structure that Einstein revealed to us. The speed of light isn't a limitation in the way a lot of people think. It's not like a traffic law that the universe has to obey. It's more fundamental than that. It's the structure of space-time. It's the geometry of reality. And within that structure, there's room for all sorts of things that seem paradoxical at first, but make perfect sense once you understand the deep principles involved. So what I want you to take away from this is not some kind of wild speculation that physics is all wrong, or that we can send messages backwards in time, or any of that science fiction nonsense. What I want you to understand is that the universe is more subtle than it appears. The rules are not as simple as they seem. And nature, real nature, not what we imagine, is far stranger and more wonderful than our intuitions would suggest. The physicists from Warsaw and Oxford who did this recent work on tachyons, they're not saying, look, we found something faster than light. They're saying, look, when we describe the physics more carefully, when we think about causality more carefully, tachyons fit in. And that's a different kind of discovery. It's not discovering a new phenomenon. It's discovering that our understanding was incomplete. This is what science is. It's not about collecting facts. It's not about memorizing the rules. It's about developing a deeper and deeper understanding of how nature actually works. And every time you think you've figured it all out, you discover that the problem is more subtle. The answer is more beautiful. The universe is more interesting than you imagined. And that's why I've spent my life doing this. That's why physicists keep asking questions, keep calculating, keep measuring, keep thinking. Because the universe is inexhaustibly wonderful.
And that was Professor Feynman. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.